I had 4 drinks that night. I went over and I hung the phone up, and Jesse and we walked out to my car. I got into the driver's seat. Jesse, he came around and got into the passenger seat, and then we drove off. Except we never made it to that other party. I was driving down this back road. It was somewhat in the country. It was a shortcut to this party we were going to. I knew this road very, very well. And as I was driving down this road, I had my radio up, and Jesse and we were cutting up and laughing, and I was starting to get into a hurry to get to this other party, so I start flying down the road going almost 80 miles an hour. The speed limit, it dropped down to 35. I continued to fly down this road, and then I drove up onto this white minivan. Well, as soon as I drove up onto this white minivan, the only thing I was thinking about is getting to this party to hook up with all my friends. So I decided to blow past them. And as I'm passing this white minivan down the road a little ways, I see this oncoming vehicle. They have their left-hand turn signal on. I start to gradually try to turn back over to my lane. And as I'm getting back over to my lane, I see this gold flash shoot in front of my face, then bang! But while I was lying on the side of the road, so worried about going to jail for a DUI, or worried about what happened to my car, I heard someone in the background yell something. And those words I heard yelled, I will not forget for the rest of my life. Because when I was lying there on the side of the road, I heard someone in the background yell, "There's a fatality on the scene. There's a fatality on the scene." And as soon as I heard those words, I realized I had just killed someone. Let me explain something to you real quick. In that cell right there for 3,117 days, if you do the math, it's about 8.5 years. While I sat in that cell for 8.5 years, I was able to think about everything in my life. And let me tell you what I thought about. Okay, I took myself all the way back to when I was in high school. I'm only going to say this because when my friends and I were in high school, of course, especially when we hit junior and seniors, we were going to parties. When I got out of high school, you know what? One thing I remember so vividly is when we were at these parties or going to bars or anything like that, if someone had 3 or 4 drinks, none of us stopped each other from driving because we didn't think it was that big of a deal. But sure enough, just a few years later, there I was, 22 years old. I had 4 drinks. I got into my car and I killed someone's grandparents. Grandparents that could have been yours. So when I was sent to F-House, I found out I went to a maximum security cell block. Everybody's locked in little 2-man cells for 23 hours every day. I walked back into F-House, and I noticed this place is just enormous. There's a top range and a bottom range. And this is an old school prison. They still have the bars, and it looked like the bars went on for miles. This officer, as soon as I come in, he directs me to go all the way up to the top. So I go up to the top, and I'm standing there with my stuff, and he goes down, he hits a button, and the cell door comes open. So I step inside. He starts screaming and shouting at me to shut the door, so I shut the door. And it was so loud in that prison, I could not hear myself think. I felt like I was going crazy. There's no way to describe to you what it's like being surrounded by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who've been locked in their cell for 23 hours every day. I turn around. Sure enough, I have to go and talk to this other guy that's sitting on the bottom bunk who's going to be my cellmate for who knows how long. I have no idea what he's committed. I just know that he's going to be in that cell with me. So, of course, I go over and I talk to him a little bit. But eventually, I get so frustrated and even scared, I just jump up in the top bunk and I lie down. I had my boots on, fully dressed. The next thing I know, shortly after that, they turned the lights off to the cell block, and then the whole cell block fell dead silent. And I could finally think again. But while I was lying there in that bed, all I could think about is how this was just my first night in prison, and I might have another 4,745 days to go. Laying in that bed, I really did not believe I was ever going to make it out of prison. I thought that was it.